Imagine spending 3 hours getting dressed just to stand in front of a camera and look pretty. No running, no fighting, no crying on cue. Just stand there, look gorgeous, and hold it together. Sounds easy, right? That is exactly what the cast of Bridgerton season 4 thought too, and they were so very wrong, because what actually happened during those promo shoots was nothing like the polished, dreamy images you see plastered across your Netflix screen. Behind every perfect poster, behind every slow-motion hair flip, and behind every smoldering glance at the camera, there was a moment where everything completely fell apart, and lucky for us, somebody kept the cameras rolling. So if you have ever wondered what really goes on when the most elegant show on television tries to take a simple promotional photo, you are in the right place. Because today we are walking through the funniest, most chaotic, most beautifully messy outtakes from the Bridgerton season 4 promo shoots. And trust us, by the end of this video, you will never look at those gorgeous cast photos the same way again. Asterisk, let us set the scene. It is early morning on the day of the big season 4 promo shoot. The set is beautiful. The lighting is perfect. The flowers are arranged just right. Everything looks like it was pulled straight out of a Regency-era painting. The crew has been on set since before sunrise, making sure every tiny detail is in its right place. The director is feeling confident. The photographers are ready. And then the cast arrives in full costume. And that is when things start to go sideways. Now, if you have ever watched Bridgerton, you already know that the costumes on this show are not simple. These are not jeans and a t-shirt situations. We are talking about corsets that are laced so tight the actors have to be reminded to breathe. We are talking about cravats with 17 individual folds that took a trained costume assistant 40 minutes to get right. We are talking about gowns with so many layers that sitting down is basically a whole separate skill set. These costumes are works of art, but on a long shoot day, they are also a complete nightmare. So there they are, the cast of Bridgerton season 4, standing in their full Regency glory, ready for their close-up. The photographer calls for the first pose. Everyone shifts into position, shoulders back, chins up, eyes forward. The room goes quiet, and just as the camera is about to click, one of the actors moves slightly to the left and a button pops clean off a jacket and shoots across the room like a tiny cannonball. It bounces off a lighting rig, skips across the marble floor, and disappears somewhere under a velvet chaise lounge. The entire crew freezes. The actor looks down at the jacket. The jacket looks back, and then, slowly, everyone on set turns to look at the head costume designer, who is standing in the corner with an expression that can only be described as a person quietly reconsidering all of their life choices. They spend the next 20 minutes on their hands and knees looking for that button. 20 minutes on a shoot day where every single minute costs money. The director is checking his watch. The photographer is retouching the lighting. And the actor is standing very still in the middle of the room, afraid to move even an inch in case something else decides to make a run for it. When they finally find the button tucked inside the fringe of a decorative cushion, the entire room lets out a breath they did not even know they were holding. The costume assistant sews it back on in record time, hands shaking slightly, and everyone gets back into position. The photographer counts down again, 3, 2, 1, and the actor sneezes. A big, full-body sneeze that sends the perfectly folded cravat flying sideways like a flag in a storm. Asterisk, here is something nobody tells you about being on a professional photo shoot. The hardest thing is not the posing. It is not the costume. It is not even the early morning call time. The hardest thing is keeping a straight face when the person standing 3 feet away from you is slowly losing their mind trying to look serious. And on the Bridgerton season 4 promo shoot, this became the single biggest problem of the entire day. The photographer had one specific vision for this particular shot. He wanted the cast to deliver what he kept calling the look, not just any look. The kind of look that stops you mid-scroll when you are browsing Netflix at 11 at night. The kind of look that makes you feel like someone just walked into a ballroom and the whole world went quiet, deep, intense, just a little bit dangerous. The kind of expression that says, I am from the 1800s and I have secrets. Simple enough request. Except nobody on that set could pull it off for more than 4 seconds before something went wrong. It started with Benedict. He is the heart of season 4 and the man knows how to carry a scene on screen. But something about standing completely still in front of a camera with no lines to say and no scene to react to just broke him entirely. He would get the look perfectly, the jaw would set just right, the eyes would go distant and brooding in exactly the way the photographer wanted. The room would go still. Everyone would lean in slightly, and then, from somewhere deep inside him, a laugh would start. Not a big laugh, not even a real laugh at first, just a tiny tremor at the corner of his mouth, a small twitch that he was desperately trying to hold back, and the harder he tried to stop it, the faster it spread across his whole face until he was fully, completely, helplessly giggling in the middle of a shoot that was supposed to look like the cover of a serious period drama. The photographer tried everything. He tried asking Benedict to think of something sad. Benedict thought about it for a moment, nodded seriously, got back into position, held the look for exactly 3 seconds, and then started laughing again because, as he later explained to the crew, the sad thing he thought of was also kind of funny in hindsight. The photographer then tried playing dramatic music in the background to set the mood. That worked for about 1 take before the music choice itself became a source of amusement, and Benedict pointed out, mid-shoot, that the song sounded like the theme to a documentary about penguins, which sent 3 other cast members into fits of laughter they also could not recover from. By this point, the director had sat down in a chair off to the side and was staring at the ceiling with the calm, empty expression of a man who had fully accepted his fate. The crew was trying very hard not to make eye contact with each other because eye contact at this point meant instant laughter for everyone. The photographer had put his camera down and was eating a sandwich, not because it was lunchtime, just because he needed a moment. And Benedict was standing in the middle of the set, in full Regency costume, tears streaming down his face from laughing so hard, genuinely apologizing to everyone in the room and meaning every word of it. They got the shot. Eventually, it took 2 hours, a complete change of photographer strategy, and someone suggesting they tell Benedict a story so boring that his face went completely neutral just from the sheer dullness of it. That story, by the way, was a detailed explanation of how a particular type of industrial carpet is manufactured. It worked like a charm. The final promo image is stunning. Benedict looks like a man with the weight of an entire dynasty on his shoulders. What you cannot see, just outside the frame, is the carpet story guy, still talking, just in case. Asterisk, there is a particular kind of patience that film directors develop over years of working in this industry. It is not the normal kind of patience that regular people have. It is a deeper, quieter, more battle-tested kind of patience. The kind that gets built up layer by layer after years of watching carefully planned shoot days dissolve into beautiful, expensive, completely uncontrollable chaos. And on the day of the Bridgerton season 4 promo shoot, that patience was tested in ways that no director school, no industry experience, and no amount of morning coffee could have ever prepared anyone for. The director of this particular shoot was a professional in every sense of the word, organized, calm, experienced, and deeply committed to getting the perfect shots before the end of the day. He had a schedule. A very detailed, color-coded, minute-by-minute schedule that he had put together the week before and was quite proud of. Every cast member had their own time slot. Every costume change was accounted for. Every lighting setup had been pre-planned. Down to the last detail, it was, on paper, a masterpiece of organization, a thing of beauty, a schedule so tight and so well thought out that there was genuinely no room for anything to go wrong. It started falling apart at 9:14 in the morning. 14 minutes into the shoot, not even close to the first coffee break, the first issue was that two cast members showed up to the wrong location on the lot at the same time. Not a different building, not a different floor, a completely different part of the studio entirely. They had both followed the directions on the call sheet perfectly, which meant the call sheet had two different locations listed for the same time slot. Nobody knew how it happened. The assistant director was on the phone immediately, trying to redirect everyone with the focused energy of an air traffic controller during a storm. The director looked at his beautiful color-coded schedule, then looked at his assistant, then looked back at the schedule, and said absolutely nothing. He just drew a very slow, very deliberate line through the first hour with a red pen and moved on. By mid-morning, the schedule had been rewritten 3 times. The third rewrite happened because one of the key lighting setups took 40 minutes longer than planned after someone discovered that a crew CL piece of equipment had been left in a van in the parking lot. Not a nearby parking lot, the overflow parking lot, the one that required a 10-minute walk and a shuttle bus to reach. The director sat in his chair during those 40 minutes with the kind of stillness that you only see in people who have completely surrendered to the moment. He did not check his phone. He did not speak. He just sat there holding his cup of tea, staring at the middle distance like a man watching a ship he built very carefully sailing slowly into a cliff. Then came the cast lunch situation. Lunch was scheduled for 1 o'clock. One cast member had a dietary requirement that had been noted, confirmed, and then somehow completely forgotten by the catering team. Another cast member had been so deep in conversation with the crew during the setup that they missed the lunch call entirely and showed up back on set an hour later having eaten nothing, slightly confused about where the time had gone, and absolutely ready to work, which was wonderful. Except that the next shot required the whole group and now one person had eaten and one person had no tea, and the energy in the room was completely unbalanced in a way that is very hard to explain unless you have ever tried to coordinate a group of people on different hunger levels into looking glamorous at the same time. The director called a reset at 2:30, not because anything had gone catastrophically wrong, but because he looked around the room, looked at his schedule, which by this point resembled a document that had survived some kind of natural disaster, and made the very wise decision that what this shoot needed more than anything else was 10 minutes where absolutely nobody was asked to do anything at all. The cast sat down, the crew sat down, someone put on music, someone else produced a plate of biscuits from somewhere that nobody could identify. And for 10 minutes, the most chaotic promo shoot in Bridgerton history just stopped and breathed. When they came back from that reset, something shifted. The pressure lifted. The cast started hitting their marks cleanly. The lighting crew moved faster. Even the schedule, tattered and rewritten as it was, started to feel manageable again. The director got his shots, every single one of them. He finished 12 minutes behind schedule, which, given everything that had happened, felt less like a failure and more like a quiet personal victory that he would carry with him for a very long time. Asterisk, nobody plans for a prop to steal the show. That is the thing about props on a shoot like this. They are supposed to sit quietly in the background and look pretty. They are supposed to add texture and atmosphere to a shot without drawing attention to themselves. A teacup here, a bouquet of flowers there, a decorative fan placed just so in someone's hand to make the whole image feel more authentically Regency. Props are supporting characters at best, background decoration at worst. They are not supposed to have a personality. They are definitely not supposed to become the most talked about thing from the entire shoot day. And yet, on the day of the Bridgerton season for promo shoot, one very ordinary prop decided it was done being ordinary and was ready for its close-up. The prop in question was a fan. Not just any fan. A handcrafted, hand-painted, silk and ivory-tone folding fin that the props department had sourced specifically for this shoot. It was genuinely beautiful. Delicate gold detailing along the edges, a painted garden scene across. The face of it that looked like something hanging in a museum. The kind of object that, when placed in the right hands at the right angle, could make an entire photograph feel like a painting. The props team was proud of it. The costume department admired it. The photographer had specifically requested it for the lead shot of the day. It was, by every measure, a very important fan. It was also, as it turned out, completely impossible to hold correctly. The problem was not the fan itself. The problem was that holding a Regency-era fan properly is an actual skill. There is a specific way the wrist has to turn, a particular angle at which the fan should be open, a certain level of casual elegance that has to come through in the grip so that it looks effortless and natural rather than like someone is holding a large and slightly confusing object they have never encountered before. In the 1800s, women spent years learning the language of the fan. Every position meant something different. Every angle sent a different social signal across a crowded ballroom. It was practically its own form of communication. Nobody on this shoot had spent years learning that. Nobody on this shoot had spent even one afternoon learning that. And it showed. The first cast member to attempt the fan shot held it upside down for the first 3 takes before anyone noticed. Not slightly upside down, fully, completely, confidently upside down. With the painted garden scene facing the floor, and the plain underside of the fan facing the camera. She was holding it with such commitment and such poise that the photographer had actually taken several shots before the props coordinator quietly walked into frame, turned the fan the right way up, and stepped back out again without saying a single word. The cast member looked at the fan, looked at the props coordinator, looked back at the fan, and said, with complete sincerity, that she had genuinely believed that was correct and had in fact been feeling very good about how natural it looked. The second cast member to attempt the fan shot opened it to enthusiastically and sent it spinning out of their hand entirely. It flew in a perfect arc across the set, cleared the head of a camera operator by approximately 4 inches, and landed face down on the floor near the craft services table. There was a very long silence. The props coordinator picked it up, inspected it carefully for damage, exhaled slowly, and brought it back. No words. Just the quiet, professional dignity of someone doing a very difficult job with grace. By the 3rd attempt, the photographer had made the executive decision to bring in a fan handling coach. Not a real one, because that is not a profession that exists in any formal capacity in the modern film industry. But a member of the costume department who had once done a deep dive into Regency etiquette for a different production and remembered enough of it to be useful. She stood just off camera and quietly coached each cast member through the correct grip, the correct wrist angle, and the correct degree of fan openness for each shot. It worked beautifully. The cast nailed it. The photos came out stunning. But here is the part that nobody expected. When the behind-the-scenes footage from the shoot was being reviewed at the end of the day, someone noticed that in nearly every wide shot from that section of the shoot, the fan was visible somewhere in the background, not being held, not being used, just sitting somewhere on set, propped against a vase, balanced on the arm of a chair, leaning against a flower arrangement. The props team had placed it around the set as decoration between takes, and somehow, in every single frame, it had ended up perfectly lit, perfectly positioned, and looking more composed than half the humans in the room. The photographer pointed this out too. The director looked at the footage for a long moment and then said, very quietly, that if the fan wanted a credit on the production, it had more than earned one. The fan did not get a credit, but it did end up in more of the final promo images than originally planned, and somewhere in the props department, someone has it displayed on a shelf with a small handwritten note underneath that reads simply, "Best performance of the day," and that, dear reader, is the real story behind the most beautiful promo shoot of the season. Not the perfect lighting, not the stunning costumes, not the dreamy cast who make everything look effortless. The real story is 17 takes, one runaway button, a carpet manufacturing tutorial, a color-coded schedule that never stood a chance, and a fan that walked onto that set with absolutely nothing to prove and left as the undisputed star of the whole production. Bridgerton Season 4 is going to be everything you are hoping for, but now you know what it actually costs to make it look that easy.